The gym was bustling that evening, the air heavy with perspiration, yet I remained engrossed in my workout, my muscles aflame. It was then that I noticed him, a man older and exuding strength, the type who not only lifted weights but seemed to command them. I had seen him before, always intensely focused and precise. His dark skin shimmered under the bright lights, his muscles taut and controlled, with short hair framing a sharp jawline and eyes that held an indescribable depth, something steady and knowing. I was in the midst of a set on the lat pull-down when he approached. His scent was clean and robust, subtly masculine. His voice was low and authoritative as he remarked, "You're putting too much strain on your shoulders." I turned my head slightly to get a better view of him. His arms were crossed over his chest, his pectorals prominent beneath his fitted shirt, veins tracing down his forearms. "What?" I asked, breathless from the exertion. "Your form. You're pulling too much with your arms. Let me demonstrate." Before I could respond, he positioned himself behind me, his presence palpable and solid. His hands found my sides, pressing into my ribs warm and firm. My breath hitched for a moment, but I remained composed. "Keep your chest up," he instructed. "Engage your lats first, like this." His fingers shifted slightly, brushing just beneath my arms, his thumbs pressing against my back. The sensation was different, more than just a correction, it felt intimate, his touch lingering, deliberate, as if he were savoring the moment. I swallowed hard and concentrated, pulling the bar down again, this time attuned to the movement as he had suggested. His voice remained close, guiding me. "Better now. Control it on the way up." I felt the tension in my back ignite in the right areas, but there was an additional heat low in my stomach, a result of his body hovering near mine, his hands lingering just a moment longer than necessary. As I released the weight, I turned slightly and found him already observing me, his gaze steady and inscrutable, yet there was something more, something I could not quite grasp. "I'm Mike," he introduced himself. "Drake," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. He nodded once in acknowledgement. He then took a towel and dried his hands. "How long have you been lifting?" I inquired. "A couple of years," I replied, attempting to adopt a serious tone. "You have the right physique for it," he remarked, his gaze sweeping over me in a manner that made my skin flush. "You just need the proper technique," I said, exhaling as I tried to dispel the strange energy enveloping me. "Yeah, I suppose I do." We engaged in a conversation about workouts, progress, and the significance of nutrition alongside lifting. He spoke with an air of authority, exuding the confidence of someone who was well-versed in his craft. The way he carried himself and the casual manner in which he regarded me caught me off guard. "You should come over on Friday night, I'll teach you how to eat properly. Protein is essential, you need to incorporate that white meat," he suggested, his gaze lingering on mine a moment longer than necessary. A slight smirk played at the corner of his lips, as if he held a secret I was unaware of. A peculiar warmth crept up my neck, and while my mind insisted it was merely a trainer looking out for another gym-goer, something in my chest tightened at his words. Nevertheless, I nodded, "Yeah, that sounds good." His smile widened slightly. "Great, I'll see you then." As he walked away, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I reassured myself it was nothing, yet my body felt differently. Friday night arrived sooner than anticipated. Throughout the day, an unusual, restless energy buzzed within me, one I could not shake off. I told myself it was merely a casual meeting, just another guy from the gym offering advice, but I could not ignore the tightness in my stomach or the tingling sensation beneath my skin, as if my body was aware of something beyond my understanding. Mike's residence was situated in a tranquil area of the city, within a modern apartment complex that featured a private entrance. I knocked once, adjusting my gym bag on my shoulder, and the door opened almost instantly. He stood there clad in a fitted black t-shirt and sweatpants, casual yet exuding a presence that filled the space effortlessly. His dark eyes scanned me. The atmosphere in the room caused a tightening sensation in my chest. He stepped back to allow me entry, and the inviting aroma enveloped me. The counter was adorned with a beautifully arranged plate of chicken, rice, and vegetables, exuding a savory richness. It was evident he had put thought into the meal. "I prepared this before you arrived," he remarked, handing me a plate. I smirked as I accepted it, acknowledging, one must maintain their protein intake. He responded with an amused yet inscrutable expression. We dined in the open kitchen, the ambience tranquil except for the clinking of our forks. He inquired about my training regimen, my aspirations, and what I aimed to achieve. He listened intently, and when he offered advice, it was straightforward and practical. Yet, beneath his directness, there was an underlying current. The way he sat across from me, his posture relaxed, and his unwavering gaze suggested he perceived something within me that I had yet to discover. Once we finished our meal, he reclined in his chair, stretching his arms leisurely. Are you interested in lifting a bit? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Why not? He continued. I have some basic equipment in the next room. Are you up for it? I hesitated, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, but ultimately nodded in agreement. Sure. He guided me into a smaller, more private space equipped with a bench, dumbbells, and a pull-up bar mounted on the wall. The lighting was softer than that of the gym, casting gentle shadows over the defined contours of his arms as he moved. Let's begin with something straightforward, he suggested, picking up a set of weights. Incline presses are great for developing the upper chest. As I reclined on the bench, he positioned himself above me, ready to spot. His hands hovered close, prepared to assist. His presence was unexpectedly powerful, creating a weight that I hadn't anticipated. By the third repetition, his hands were once again on me. Not to guide or correct, but simply there, with a light yet intentional touch that brushed against my shoulders and chest. His contact lingered, causing my breaths to quicken. I completed the set and let the weights fall to the floor. A muted thud resonated within me as my heart raced in my chest, not solely due to physical exertion. Upon sitting up, I found him still observing me, his expression inscrutable yet composed. He then extended his hand, fingers encircling the back of my neck with a deliberate slowness, neither forceful nor hurried, just a steady pressure. His thumb grazed my skin lightly, causing my pulse to quicken. I should have recoiled, I should have dismissed the moment with laughter, yet I remained still. His grip tightened slightly, his gaze unwaveringly fixed on mine, devoid of any question or doubt. Then, in a low, quiet tone, he asked, Do you feel that? I swallowed hard, my throat parched, uncertain of his inquiry, or perhaps I was not. The heat radiated from his touch, igniting a warmth in my stomach that felt tight, unfamiliar, and perilous. He did not move or push, he simply maintained his hold, his hand firm against my neck, his eyes locked onto mine. I exhaled shakily, attempting to speak his name, but the words eluded me. He released me slowly, his fingers trailing against my skin before withdrawing, leaving my body feeling colder despite the warmth of the room. For a prolonged moment, we exchanged silent glances, and then he spoke again, his voice even softer. You can tell yourself whatever you wish, but your body already knows the truth. I felt as though I stood on the precipice of something profound, something I could not fully comprehend or control, yet I had no desire to retreat. The air between us was thick with an electric charge, a sensation I had never experienced before. My body was taut, not from resistance, but from a deeper pull toward him, an attraction that defied logic yet felt unavoidable. Mike held my gaze, calm and steady, as if he were waiting for me to grasp a truth he already understood. Perhaps I did know. Perhaps I had sensed it from the very first moment his hands lingered on me in the gym, from the way he regarded me, not seeking permission but simply waiting for me to cease pretending. I did not move away. I believe I simply allowed it to unfold. His hand returned to my neck, this time with a firmer grip, his fingers pressing into my skin with a sense of ownership over the moment, as if he possessed me entirely, and I acquiesced. The warmth of his palm sent a shiver coursing down my spine, yet I did not flinch. Instead, I leaned into the sensation. He exhaled slowly, as if relishing my reaction, the way my breath caught and my pulse quickened beneath his touch. Do you feel that? He inquired again, his voice now softer and rougher. I swallowed, my throat parched, and replied, Yes, I do. Then, he drew me closer, and I offered no resistance. I did not even pause. My body responded instinctively, moving before my mind could fully comprehend, and suddenly, I was near enough to feel his warmth, the solidity of his chest. Everything about him exuded strength, his hands, his arms, the way he held me as if he understood my needs even before I did. His scent was deep and masculine, intoxicating my senses and making my head spin. I had never been this close to a man before, never allowed anyone to touch me in this manner, but at that moment, nothing else mattered. His fingers traced a deliberate path down my neck, over my collarbone, skimming the edge of my shirt. Each touch was intentional, as if he were taking his time to explore my reactions. I shivered under his hands, my muscles tensing not from resistance, but from an unexplainable need that I was unwilling to fight. He must have sensed it, he must have known, for his grip tightened, his chest rising and falling slowly as he controlled himself, holding back. "Mike," I whispered, my voice barely audible. That single utterance was all it took. He moved his hands to grip my waist, his body pressing against mine, and in an instant, I was locked against him, heat radiating between us. My breath quickened, my heart pounding against my ribs as his fingers dug into my sides, holding me as if he had no intention of letting go, and I found that I did not want him to. His touch was confident and dominant, yet not forceful, it was slow and teasing, as if he fully understood the effect he was having on me. He may have known from the very beginning that I was no longer engaged in thought or questioning. Instead, I was overwhelmed by a rush of emotions. The way his body aligned with mine, and how his fingers roamed over me as if he had every right to do so, left me breathless. I instinctively gripped his shoulders, my fingers digging into his solid muscles. His strength and confidence radiated, igniting a sensation within me that I could not articulate. This felt right, and I was indifferent to its implications or the labels I had adhered to for years. All I was aware of was my desire for him. Mike must have perceived the longing in my gaze, for his hold on me tightened, his breath warm against my skin. I sensed his restraint, the tension in his muscles, and the deliberate control in his actions, yet I yearned for him to abandon that restraint. I wanted all of him. I pressed closer, my body responding instinctively, and that was all he required. His hand glided over my back, slow and firm, drawing me in deeper as if he were claiming me. Perhaps he was, perhaps I belonged to him from that moment onward. From that night, everything transformed. I ceased to question, to pretend, and to rationalize the connection between us, allowing myself to simply experience it. Mike became the focal point of my existence in a manner that felt natural. Each day, I longed for his presence, his touch, and the quiet assurance in his eyes that conveyed he understood my needs and emotions even before I did. We continued our training sessions at the gym as we had before, yet the atmosphere was altered. Each moment was charged with an unspoken tension, an electric current. Every time he adjusted my form, or his hands found their way to my waist or back, I felt that magnetic pull, that fire. He was no longer merely guiding me, he was claiming me, and I relished it. I anticipated our workouts not solely for the strength I was gaining but for what would follow. After each session, we returned to his place, a ritual that had become ours, where we would share a meal together. He always emphasized the importance of high-protein meals, ensuring I never neglected my nutrition. The meal itself was merely a brief interlude, a moment of tranquility before the inevitable. As soon as we concluded our discussion about repetitions, macronutrients, and recovery, he would give me the look, one that ignited a warmth within me, tightening my chest and causing my skin to tingle with anticipation. Without fail, he would draw me in. This connection transcended mere passion, it was profound. Each time he touched me, it felt as though he was awakening something deep within me, something I had not even realized existed. His hands glided over my skin with a deliberate slowness and strength, as if he were committing every detail of me to memory. He held me with unwavering confidence, both in himself and in us. When he whispered my name against my skin, his breath warm and his voice gravelly, he conveyed that I belonged to him and that he would not let me go. I had no desire for him to do so. I had never experienced such a feeling before, never felt so desired, so claimed. It was intoxicating how he took charge, how he understood my body and knew precisely how to push me to the brink, making me crave him more than I had ever craved anything in my life. I was entirely his, and my desire extended beyond the physical. I yearned for all of him. In those quiet moments when we lay entwined in the soft light of his apartment, my head resting against his chest while his fingers traced gentle patterns on my skin, he would pull me closer without uttering a word, as if he needed me just as much as I needed him. The way he looked at me, with that steady, unwavering gaze, suggested he saw right through me, as if he had anticipated this connection long before I had. I had fallen for him deeply, and I was indifferent to what that meant. I had spent my life believing I was someone else, someone who only desired women, someone who would never find himself in this situation. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was him, Mike, with his strength, his certainty, and his touch, making me feel more alive than I ever had before. We had previously kept our connection private, a bond that was intensifying between us like a rapidly spreading fire. At the gym, we were merely two individuals engaged in training, motivating each other to push harder and grow stronger side by side. However, the moment we found ourselves alone, crossing the threshold of his apartment, all restraint and self-control vanished. He would take me, and I would willingly surrender time and again until I was utterly exhausted, my skin marked by his touch, lost in his presence, overwhelmed by his strength and the sense of safety he provided. I cherished every moment, every single second, because Mike had transformed from being just my trainer into everything I desired. It has been a year since that initial night at Mike's place, a year since I ceased pretending and fighting my feelings, a year since I fully embraced being his. Nothing has ever felt more right. We continue to train together daily, pushing each other and growing stronger side by side. To an outsider, we appear to be just two men at the gym, dedicated lifters committed to their craft. Yet, no one notices how his hand lingers on my waist a moment too long when he assists me, or how my body responds instinctively to his every touch, no matter how slight. No one perceives the way my breath hitches when he draws me close, whispering encouragement in my ear. The moment we step outside, I cease to be the disciplined individual from the gym and completely surrender to his embrace. Mike is everything I never realized I needed. He possesses me not only physically but in a profound way that sometimes frightens me. I no longer desire him merely as a physical presence, I love him. It took me months to articulate this, not due to a lack of feeling, but because I was still reconciling the notion that someone like me, who had spent a lifetime believing he was different, could harbor such feelings for a man. Following an intense workout, as we lay together in the soft glow of his bedroom, I felt the familiar slow ache of desire enveloping us. My body was weary, yet my skin still buzzed from his touch. In that intimate moment, words escaped my lips unexpectedly. I had not intended to voice them, nor had I been contemplating them. However, as he drew me closer, his face nestled against my neck, his warm breath caressing my skin, and his hand resting firmly over my chest, I felt compelled to speak. "I love you." For a brief moment, I sensed him freeze, then he released a slow, deep breath, his fingers pressing into my skin as if he had been anticipating my confession. "I know," he replied, his voice low and gravelly. "I love you too." In that instant, I realized this was not merely a fleeting romance or a passing phase, it was something profound and genuine. This was our reality, and I felt indifferent to external opinions or the doubts I had harbored about myself in the past. None of that mattered anymore, for I had discovered something that brought clarity to my life. I had found him, and I was determined never to let him go.